As a man, you should never, ever have an intelligent conversation with a woman, or else she might start to think that you like her, and then she will leave you. Yesterday, I came across some of the worst relationship advice I have ever heard, courtesy of one Casey Zander. I felt selfish keeping it to myself, so what can I say except you're welcome.
All right, this one is going to be intense. Never have intellectual or meaningful conversations with a woman ever. This is a perfect example of female nature, okay? This is a perfect example of what not to do. This is a perfect example of how to take a woman with very high interest in you and basically take her interest all the way down to zero. If you have logical or meaningful or rational discussions or intellectually meaningful conversations with a woman, she is going to start to really not like you. So this is what you have to know, okay? All forms of real life discussion with women will turn them off. Literally all forms. All forms of real life discussion will turn them off. I will give you examples why in just a little bit. Real conversation signals one thing to the female subconscious. When she watches a man engage in real life logical discussion or meaningful conversation with her, it signals one thing to the female subconscious. It signals that he is on my level. He is on my level, okay? And now she wants a guy who is out of her league. So let me explain to you what I mean. Real conversation, okay, here's her, right here, this is her, and this is you, okay? This line right here shows that this is the same level of conversation. You guys are communicating in the real world, okay? And instantly now she wants a guy who is out of her league to satisfy hypergamy better. So then instantly when a guy doesn't take her seriously, and now all he's doing is sitting back, chill, talking about food, talking about the vibe, talking about the music, and talking about how much fun they are going to have together. All of a sudden, this is her, and now, guess what happens? She looks up to you. And she goes, wow, I found a man who's out of my league. Now hypergamy satisfied, and now she wants you. This is exactly how the female subconscious starts to gravitate towards certain men who act correctly, because this is happening subconsciously. And most men just don't understand this. So, a man who engages in real discussion with a woman is a man who is taking her seriously. This is what you have to know. If you engage in real life discussion with her, you are literally taking her seriously, okay? So women despise men who take them seriously. Women literally despise men who take them seriously. They start to get turned off by those men, and she's going to look at you and go, wow, in the beginning you were so attractive, you were so charming, you looked to be so charismatic, I really thought that you could lead this discussion the right way, and now you totally act incorrect. This is what she starts to see. So you having real conversation with her automatically assumes that you trust her words and that you trust her judgment. That is what it automatically assumes, and this will turn her off, okay? So here's what you're going to find play out in your own dating life. She only looks up to a man that she can follow and will automatically trust his judgment. And she trusts his judgment because he does not take any of the conversation seriously, which signals to her hypergamy that he is out of her league, which now makes her consistently want to keep seeing him. When you start talking to her like you guys are on the same level of attractiveness, it will completely ruin anything that you guys had, okay? So communicating logically or in a real conversation with a woman makes her think that she can do better. It makes her think that she can do better, it makes her hypergamy not satisfied, and it makes her look for better. So hypergamy wants to find a man who won't communicate with anything meaningful. So here's the funniest thing about how women will typically operate. When you talk about the food and the vibes and the music and the fun, this is what women actually associate deep, meaningful conversation with, because now she puts you in the category of, oh wow, we have a real relationship. A relationship to a woman is nothing but a set of words. And if you try to make that set of words go intellectually stimulating and high level, you are losing her by the second. You will literally watch her entire attraction fade and she's completely not into you at all. That's just how it will work. I don't make the rules, I just report on what I'm seeing, okay? So, hypergamy tries to find a man who will not communicate meaningfully. Okay, so meaningful or intellectual conversations can only be saved for you with your dude friends, okay, you and your guy friends when you're hanging out, or you and other men that you're associating with. This is what you have to know. Any form of logical or real things in your life will turn them off, okay? Any form of logic, any form of real conversation will turn them off. So this is why all forms of intellect ruins her desire level. I'm going to explain. When you start to communicate in a way where you are discussing intellect, okay, intellect and meaningful conversations, hypergamy is now less satisfied. Hypergamy is less satisfied and she no longer likes you. So only a man willing to communicate like this, okay? This is what she says on a subconscious level. She goes, only a man willing to communicate like this must take me seriously, therefore I am better than him. This is what her subconscious starts to signal to her. So here's what you're going to notice, okay? Any age, any occupation, okay? No matter where they live. This is what I'm telling you. Any age of the woman, I don't care. I don't care how old she is. Whatever her occupation is, I don't care if she has a 4-year degree, doesn't have a 4-year degree, has a doctorate degree, doesn't have a doctorate degree, works at a coffee shop or works as a nurse or works wherever. It doesn't matter. Literally doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're talking to a barista or if you're talking to, let's say, an attorney or a doctor. Any age, any occupation, no matter where they live, doesn't matter. When you start to have meaningful conversation with it, it turns them off. So when I'm with a woman, I'm talking about all the surface level stuff. Good movies that I like, funny cartoons, steak, pizza, waffles, and now you've unlocked her laughter. Once you've unlocked her laughter, okay, now what you're going to notice is she'll probably start future pacing her making food with you, or you two meeting up, or her wanting to do all these things with you, and it's because you're never serious, and then you're going to watch them laugh and watch them want to be with you. You will notice that this is exactly how it will play out. So with that said, okay, to retain a woman's interest level, you have to learn how to change your entire communication pattern. Literally, your entire communication pattern has to change, and it has to shift to less effort, with less thought, with more fun and vibe, okay? And what you're going to notice is when you are with her, she's going to think that the entire conversation is now fun. And because it's lighthearted, she associates that with deep, meaningful, intellectual conversation, not actually the intellectual, purposeful stuff that you want to talk about or that you talk about with your dude friends, okay? So she can only feel safe when a man does not take her seriously. The second a guy starts to take her seriously, she no longer feels safe, and here's why. Here's what happens, and here's what you're going to notice. Most of the time, she probably doesn't even trust her own words or her own emotion or her own thoughts. So seeing that you do, literally turns her off. She's like, wow, this guy does not understand me at all.
What are you talking about, Willis? This has got to be one of the most brain dead takes I've ever heard. And the confidence to sell it as advice is absurd. What's far more likely to be happening with this sweeping generalization is that the minute guys like this asshole attempt to have an intelligent and logical conversation, it backfires, because then that woman discovers that he has no intelligence or logic to speak of. That's why it turns her off and she loses attraction. Listening to some bloke glaze Andrew Tate or have some pseudo-intellectual yap fest about how he's a high-value man and modern women are all these hypergamous whores who should be subjugated will definitely dry up any vaginas within a 2-mile radius.
And what actually happens when people are getting divorced isn't these types of scenarios. It's like literally initiated, you'll probably know the stat, between 2/3 and 80% of the time by women. That should be outlawed. You legally actually should not be able to do that. He knows. You can't divorce. You can separate, but you can't actually divorce. That's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive.
You got to endure. People are too.
You want to stick in the
People
relationship.
are just.
I mean, look,
people
I'm gonna be
nowadays
honest.
are just.
So yeah, maybe if you're an idiot, keep the intellectual conversations to a minimum. If you can't swim, don't venture into deep water without your water wings. I genuinely think that this is less about engaging in mentally stimulating conversation with the woman in your life and more about what is getting said during said conversations. Women can be very good listeners and are actually better than men at picking up on tone and body language and micro expressions and are always looking for a red flag. So maybe you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're better keeping things about music and vibes in movies because you always end up with your foot in your mouth otherwise. So yeah, maybe save that foot and mouth stuff for the boys. Just boys being boys, right?
Boys being boys, you're a comrade in arms. Now come here so I can hold you in my arms. And he's like, nah, I'm staying home with my wife. I'm like, whatever, nigga. That's gay. Spending time with your girl, gay.
But guys, seriously, imagine living out the rest of your days alongside someone you can never have an intellectually stimulating conversation with. Someone you believe you can never speak to with any logic, someone you are treating like they are incapable of intelligence. And then imagine putting yourself in her shoes in that relationship, knowing that's how you view her character and her capacity. It couldn't be me, man. Sometimes my girl and I forget to turn on a movie or even start making dinner because we get too caught up talking about the things that interest us. I've actually never met a woman who I genuinely get on with the way I do with her. If anything, the alignment that we have found in our perspectives and value systems through conversation has only deepened the attraction. To be honest, a better litmus test for the health of your relationship and dating life would be to ask yourself, would I hang out with this woman if I could not have sex with her? Now, that is an eye-opener. At least it was for me. It made me step back and realize that I was entertaining women I genuinely didn't even like as people. How sad is that? I will concede this, though. Placing yourself in a position above women in this way will work to some degree, but only on women who are insecure doormats, which is the only type of women that red pill thinking can ever align you with, especially if you are an average Joe schmo. Creators like Casey and Myron Gaines and Donovan Sharp, they make everything into bro science power games. They boil all interactions with women down into transactions of a man's money and power for a woman's sex and obedience. They don't preach leadership, they preach tyranny. They sell a narrative that paints women as objects to be bought and sold and never taken seriously as human beings, and instead to see them as opportunistic parasites incapable of logic. All of this is narcissism, sexism, and confirmation bias. Personally, I think it's really interesting to step back and start to look at the popular advice and content online today with the added context that the narcissistic index of America and Canada, etc., has been increasing by over 1% every year since the 90s, since before the introduction of social media, which has only magnified it. So, if we are 25 to 100% more narcissistic on average today than we were in the 80s, that probably means that a lot of the popular advice today is narcissistic in nature. Not because it's good advice or helpful advice, but because it's what the masses of increasingly self-centered and insecure people want to hear. Think of how popular the Sprinkle Sprinkle lady, Shira 7, is with all of her advice on how to use men like ATMs. Same thing. A lot of this men versus women garbage is just a contest to see who can profit the most, who can be the most narcissistic, or who can be the most victimized, or both of those things. Anyways, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know if I'm hitting the nails on the head. I'm just happy to be out here swinging. See you next time.